Oh, oh my God.
Hi,
Uh,
how you doing?
thanks for the. I'm doing good. Thanks for the patience. Sorry about being so very late.
No, thank
It's just
you.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
No, thank you for taking the time with for myself and Silver Tiger Media today. It's greatly
Sure.
appreciated. First off, I just want to say how big this moment is for myself. I've been a fan of yours and him since about 20 years ago when I first
Oh,
heard
wow.
Right Here in My Arms. Young 13-year-old and just found that. And so having the chance for this interview today is just blown my mind. So thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
Really appreciate
Well,
it.
small world. No, no, thanks for having me. That's great. Hopefully get to see you again on the tour. We're
Oh
flying
yeah,
over. It's
no,
it's like 7 weeks to
yeah,
go, and we should be there.
very keen for the March gig. But speaking of gigs, it's been what 10 years since you were last over here with him
I
on
think
the
so.
Soundwave tour.
Yeah. Yeah, we did that
Um,
Soundwave. That was the last time, and Soundwave is no more, and him are
no.
no more. So yeah.
Do you have any memories from back then of the tour or the gigs or anything like that from?
Well, Soundwave was always very special because there was so many bands, and because you had those most of the times the bands were always traveling together, so you shared a lot of buses and then a lot of flights. So 99% of the time when you're playing festivals anywhere else in the world, you never get the chance to shoot the poop with anybody. You never have the time because you're in and out.
Yeah,
But with Soundwave, it was like those side shows and side wave shows, I think they were called, and that gave the bands the opportunity to get to know each other a bit more, and also to get to know the cities a bit more. So I remember we had a couple of really good cool parties, and there was a few mates who weren't musicians who I hadn't seen in a long time, who flew over from the UK to the festival, and it was meeting of minds. And we had a blast. It was a cool vibe, to be play a few great shows, dance to like old school Abba things, Abba songs until the wee hours of the morning, and while getting messed up. And it was my last days of full blown rock and roll debauchery, I guess.
well, your cover of "Knowing Me, Knowing You" is definitely high on my playlist. So
Right,
definitely
yeah, yeah, yeah.
appreciate
Well, that was Mark. Yeah, Mark's idea. The guy whose solo album it is, and he just for whatever reason thought that I might be interested. And the cool thing is that I never really listened to ABBA. They were huge in Scandinavia, but my parents weren't into that stuff. So my
it.
dad was listening to like Motown, and my mom loved the Rolling Stones, and so I grew up with sort of different kind of music. So I'm still not a fan, but I thought that "Know Me, Knowing You" is a
Yeah.
rather good.
Killer cover. But so how do you feel coming back here, 10 years later as a solo artist, as opposed to, being with him? Have you come across many times before that? Like, with him, had you come across much?
Oh no, well, we never had the chance. As you know, Australia is quite far away, so I think we played there three times, maximum four.
Yeah,
And usually always had to do with festivals. We played this time around. We're playing New Zealand as well. We
yeah,
played Auckland once with
yeah, right.
him, and the same venue, Powerstation, and it's very special. It really doesn't feel like a proper world tour unless you fly over to Australia as well. Then it really starts to feel, because we just finished a few dates in early November. It was, we played South America,
Yeah,
and that was great. And then it's been such a blessing to be able to travel and tour proper again after the pandemic, and then of
mm,
course also not knowing if people would be interested in what I do after such a long break after him disbanded. So you never know, and I've been, yeah, I truly feel blessed, and it's been fun. There's been a lot of familiar faces, people I haven't seen in many years, but then when you're actually on stage, you're like, oh, you're there. Oh man, how you doing? That sort of thing, which is wonderful. That people have the stamina, and people seem to be quite loyal to the music. Which
yeah,
I'm a fan of music as well, so I know, if you love a band, you love a band, and that's it. There's
yeah.
nothing
Well,
that.
that's
So
exactly right. And so, it's
yeah.
been a year since you've had the release of Neon Noir or thereabouts. How are you
Mhm.
finding the reception? You're having, it's, as you just said, you're grateful that people are still coming out to see you. So how's it feel a year on since the release?
Oh, but we've been really pleasantly surprised with the band, how well people are receiving the new one, because we're doing like 50-50 instead. We're doing like half of the songs are hymn songs and half the songs are the new ones. And we're crisscrossing, sort of zigzagging between the old and the new. And they're working surprisingly well together. And also that there are quite a lot of people who appreciate the new stuff. I dare even say that there are people who know the new stuff better than the
Yeah.
hymn stuff on an occasion, which is, well, of course, for me, it's absolutely, it's fantastic, since it doesn't feel that I'm completely washed out. There's not just about plain old tracks. That would be great too, but I I always feel hungry for new adventures and new sort of perspectives, musically speaking. And I'm glad that if I've been able to tickle someone's fancy with Neo Noir.
Yeah, of course. So was having a solo album, something you've always wanted to work on, like throughout your music
Um,
career?
well, I've usually back in the days of being in him, I worked in very similar fashion. I wrote the basic structures and basic sort of skeletal arrangement of the song, then took the ideas to the rehearsal place. And this time around, I didn't have a band, so I just took everything a bit further myself. I started recording the stuff straight from the get go and see, saw where it could take me. And so so in that sense, it's the way you're working is not so different. And a lot of times, I'm a band guy. I grew up in a band, and
Yeah.
I was there with the band for 25 years. So I don't kind of understand when we're touring. I guess it's similar to like or not dissimilar to Vincent Fournier slash Alice Cooper. It is like VV is a band for me.
Yeah.
It's like an experience, and that's the well, it's not an act I would put on, but it's uh because it's still me, and it's not that I would wear a mask or have a role to play when being on stage, but it still feels like an extension, or it's the artistic aspect of what I do. And it feels as if I was in a band as opposed to being a solo artist.
Yeah.
I don't know how that feels in
Yeah.
essence. The cool thing about the solo label is the fact that I get to decide scheduling better. I'm not talking about touring, but I'm talking about like when I want to work on music or whatever. I don't need to call anybody up and see if they're up for it. I can
Yeah,
just
that's
like
fair.
start doing it. Yeah, yeah, it makes that thing simpler, but at the same time, it's quite solitary. So I think that working on Neo Noir during the pandemic made me maybe realize how it might feel to be a painter or to an author, because you
Yeah.
have to do awful a lot of focused work by yourself before you give the text over to the editors or the gallerist or
Yeah,
whatever
of
it might
course.
be. So,
Did you have people
I
to
think,
bounce the ideas off? Like,
oh well,
through the pen?
funnily enough, funnily enough, Miguel, the bass player of him, he came over quite a few times. We're still in touch, and keep the friendship alive. And even throughout the pandemic, when it started to get a bit easier, he came over. He doesn't live too far away from me, and came over to listen to some of the music, and also just to check upon me, as we did during the pandemic. That people are not going,
Yep, that's
even
fair.
more bonkers. Yeah, indeed, indeed. So, but I had him, and then I had Anto, the guy who played keyboards on the first him album. He was around quite a bit. We're really close friends. He's
Yeah.
he's got restaurants, and he's a chef, and that's his culinary stuff is his
Oh, wow.
forte. But he's a very talented guy musically speaking, and he's very into electronic music and that sort of stuff. But we get along very well, and he was also somebody I would bounce ideas off, and also Tim Palmer, the guy who mixed and sort of
Yep.
co-produced it, as he's a guy I've known since 2002
Yep.
when he mixed Love Metal.
Yeah.
So he was an important guy. Yeah, he was sort of like giving me the confidence at times when I was lacking some. So to keep on going and to because it felt like quite a daunting task to all of a sudden create 12 new songs or productions out of thin air
Yeah,
at
of
the
course.
yeah. So but I'm happy that I pulled through, and that I'm happy. I think it's an important thing for me to show. Also, it's like I call it kind of Neo Noir is a great like a business card, in a way that if there ever would be a band looking for a singer, that's a good business card. That's like, this is what I can do, and this is what I can do all by myself. So
Yeah.
hey, you have to be better than this, and which necessarily doesn't take much, but you know what I mean. It was an
Yeah.
important way of me maybe learning what I can pull off and what I can't pull off, and what are the good things about when working solo compared to working with the band. So it was an important lesson to be learned.
Yeah, no, that's unreal. And I mean, calling Neon Noir a good business cards, I find like incredibly understated. Brilliant album.
It's quite a large one, especially if you're talking about the vinyl. But there you go.
But so just one thing I'm curious of, because I know you're a Sabbath fan, and being a bassist and everything like that. And I'm a huge Sabbath fan. But do you have a favorite Sabbath album or song or riff?
That's a tough one. Sabbath was such a big part of my musical upbringing.
Mm,
After in my teenage years and afterwards, it was such a big deal. They're more than music, and it's more than a band. It's a way of life and sort of a church of sorts.
agree.
Or Birmingham. I've always called Birmingham the Mecca, because that is kind of like the holy place of metal, and
Yeah.
the birth of the kind of music that I really gravitate towards. So I was listening to quite a bit of Sabbath during the tour. I would have to. I'll throw you a curveball and say that I really enjoy Solitude by Black
Yeah.
Sabbath. The the really quiet, pretty ballad that
Yeah.
has great bass lines by Giza, and it's got the flute played by supposedly by Tony Iommi. So
Yes. Yeah. Nice.
it's a weird song, but they've got a ton of great riffs, as you know,
Oh,
and they most of them are iconic. So
very.
it's the whole thing. It's the whole package because also it's not just about Iommi. It's about Ozzy's voice, how it resonates with the guitars, and how well Iommi and Butler play together. Giza, how well they meld and how well they sort of like support each other. And Giza playing the notes when Tony isn't playing certain notes, and that's the magic of music. And then also Bill Ward, who's very, you know,
Solid
you
drummer.
know, yeah, he was very jazzy, as opposed to these. He wasn't a metal drummer per se. He wasn't a sort of just straight beat four
Oh,
four,
no.
and that's
And that's it. Like,
he
I
was
throw
all,
on
yeah.
the.
Yeah. They sound, the old Sabbath album, they sound like a live organism because it's kind of like going everywhere. It's got tentacles that are like squiggling about, and 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 that's very special. And also, there's so many other things about Sabbath that are special. The fact that they came from very working class background and from a place that wasn't considered glitzy or glamorous at all,
Mm.
and they still feel exactly like the same people they've always been.
Well, yeah.
They might have been a bit more, in Ozzy's case, a bit more intoxicated at times or whatever, but it's still the same person, and it's still
Mm.
the same. It feels very honest,
Yeah.
and that's something that we can all aspire to, especially in the realm of music. Just stick to your guns and do whatever you feel is the best thing to do.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, incredible advice. Um,
Well, easier said than done.
Now, just another sort of question that I did want to have before we, wrap up. So, way back when, I think it was when you collaborated on Thornography with Cradle of Filth, uh,
Right.
there was a rumor, and I think it was a rumor back then because, didn't have the tech that we do now, that you and Danny Filth were going to have a collaborative effort on a project. Did that ever come about?
No, we did. There was this like tribute to Black Sabbath. I think was the sort of like a compilation album for a magazine in the UK, and we did once. Yeah, we did. We did one song that was we called ourselves the Deviants, and
That's
with
what I
the
was
D
looking
and the
for. Yeah.
V. Yeah, and the song was based on the poem that's on the when you open up the gatefold of the first album. So Danny read it, and I made sort of like soundscapey stuff around it, and it was just something fun to do. He's a really cool guy and really fun guy too. And because I also sang on a song, yeah, Thornography. I did the Byronic Men, and
Yep.
it was John Fryer who produced their. Was it Meridian? Or
Yep.
no, no, sorry,
Medium.
not Meridian, Median.
Medium. Mm.
Yeah, and that happened not too long after Razorblade Romance. So I remember we went to the opening party for the album in London, and I remember because there was such a big storm that we couldn't fly over to Portugal to continue our tour. So we had a couple of days off, and as it will happen, they were having their big sort of like launch night I think a chapel somewhere, as you do when you Cradle of Filth, somewhere in North London and so forth. And I remember it because Doug Bradley was there because he was doing the speech, the voiceovers, and I grew up watching Hellraiser, and I asked an autograph from him to my, for my little brother, and yeah, it was a good night. I really appreciate Cradle of Filth. I always have. I always thought that they're very similar in that Sabbath sort of vein, that they've always done their own thing, even though it's been a revolving door regarding the band members, and it's been quite tumultuous in the past. Quite a roller coaster ride for the band, but I still think that they're one of the originators of that ilk of black metal that is maybe a bit more easily accessible, and that has the very uniquely British, poetic, Byronic sense.
Yeah, that does love a good tongue in cheek, Danny. Always
Yeah,
when they come to Australia, like they're definitely amazing live.
yeah, they're
Always,
fantastic. They've always been. Yeah,
and he always just like he's just as you said, the British humor. He'll always say something that just gets the crowd just laughing. It's unreal. But so with you heading to Australia, after so long, is there anything you're wanting to do, or do you have time to do anything sightseeing or anything like that while you're over here?
oh, well, I'm a musician first and foremost, so I think that the most important thing is to be there when the gigs happen, be focused and be there in the moment, and that's why we're flying over. I've never been a big touristy person. I've never actually, well, never say never, but I think I've never had a proper holiday where I would actually fly over somewhere to do nothing.
Yeah,
So it's usually always because of music or because of a project or and I find that very important to have a reason
yeah,
to go somewhere. And when you have that sort of reason, everything else is secondary. But at the same time, you're influenced by the surroundings, by the food, by the people you meet, and you always get to see a little. And when being in a band, the cool thing is that you usually get inside the culture through the back door, so to speak. It's like you don't see the country or the cities via or through touristy eyes, but you see it through the local people and through their sort of vibes, and especially when it comes to restaurants and bars and how things really are. It's a great way to be introduced to a new culture. So what long-winded answer, I know, but I think the cool thing hopefully is like I consider myself like a dog with a territory you mark by pissing. So each and every tour the circles come in a bit wider. But by that I mean they might only be a few blocks, but I know the area a bit more and feels like home, as opposed to having a minute schedule where you're like, I got to be at that, that restaurant at that time and that hotel at that time and that gallery at that time, which to me feels incredibly stressful.
oh,
So I'm just, I'm glad that we're able to fly over. It always feels awesome in the truest sense of the word to be able to travel outside from my pissing territory here in Helsinki to other places and hear and see that people still seem to enjoy the kind of rackets I make. It's quite a special feeling, and so that's what I'm waiting for.
Pissing circle.
Well, you can put it that way, sure. What an image.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to myself tonight. It's, as I said, greatly appreciated. And I'm keen as hell to see Vivi live in March in Melbourne. It's going to be incredible.
See you soon, in a few weeks, and have a great Australia Day. Don't you have that tomorrow?
Will do. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Cool. Yeah. See you later.
See ya.
Bye.